Hi everyone. Welcome to Speak English Easily 24/7. Don't forget to subscribe because we share helpful English tips every day. It's Blake here, and today I have another English listening practice episode for you. But before we start, I want to ask you a few questions. Have you ever found it hard to stay motivated while learning English? Have you ever felt frustrated because your progress seemed very slow? Or maybe you've wondered how some people learn English so well and become fluent. If any of these things sound familiar, then today's story is just for you. This is a true story about a man named Daniel. Daniel is a real person who learned English the hard way, but he never gave up. His story is simple, yet it teaches us important lessons about learning English and gaining confidence. Daniel grew up in a small town where no one spoke English. He only knew his native language, and English seemed like something far away, something he could see only in movies or on the internet. It felt distant and almost impossible to reach. When Daniel turned 16, something changed. His school announced a new exchange program. The best students would get a chance to study in the United States. Daniel was excited about the idea, but he had a big problem. He barely knew any English. At first, he laughed at the idea. How can I compete with other students who already speak English, he thought. But one day, he saw an online video that changed everything. It was about a boy from another country who learned English by listening to podcasts, singing songs, and even talking to himself in English every day. That video made Daniel feel hopeful. He thought, if he can do it, maybe I can too. From that moment, Daniel made a promise to himself. He would practice English every single day, even if it was just 10 minutes. He started small. First, he watched English cartoons with subtitles. Then, he listened to English songs and tried to write down the lyrics. Sometimes he made mistakes. Sometimes he couldn't understand the words at all. But he didn't give up. He kept practicing every day, little by little. Slowly, he began to notice small changes. He could understand simple phrases when he listened to English, and he started recognizing words in songs. Daniel also began speaking to himself in English. At first, it felt strange and silly. He would repeat sentences slowly, sometimes stopping in the middle because he didn't know the words. But over time, these small efforts started to add up. He realized that learning English was not about being perfect immediately. It was about practice, patience, and consistency. Even when progress seemed slow, he kept going. Soon, Daniel began reading short English stories. He would underline new words and look up their meanings. He also started writing small sentences about his day. Every day, he added a little more. His confidence grew slowly but surely. Even when he made mistakes, he treated them as lessons rather than failures. By the time the exchange program arrived, Daniel could speak and understand enough English to participate in classes in the United States. He was not perfect, but he was ready. His hard work had paid off, and he had learned a valuable lesson. Learning English is a journey. It does not happen overnight, but with persistence and daily practice, anyone can improve. Daniel's story is proof that even if you start with very little knowledge, you can make progress. The key is to stay consistent, keep practicing, and never give up, no matter how hard it seems. Today, Daniel speaks English confidently, but he remembers those early days when every word was a challenge. He wants learners like you to know that it is possible to reach your goals with patience, effort, and a positive mindset. After a few months of practicing English by listening and reading, Daniel started noticing small changes. He could understand phrases from movies and even recognize some words on social media. These little successes made him smile and feel proud of himself. It was not much, but it showed that his hard work was paying off. Then Daniel decided it was time to start speaking English. At first, he was very shy. He didn't want anyone to hear him because he was afraid of his accent and making grammar mistakes. Speaking out loud seemed scary, and he almost gave up on the idea. But one day, while walking home, he saw his reflection in a shop window. He took a deep breath and said out loud, "I can do this." That small moment gave him courage. From that day on, he started talking to himself in English. He described what he was doing, what he saw around him, and even what he felt. It sounded funny to him at first, but it worked. Slowly, his pronunciation got better, and he became more confident in speaking. Soon, it was time for the big test, the exchange program application. The program required an English interview. Daniel was nervous. His hands shook and his heart raced, but he reminded himself of all the progress he had made. During the interview, he made a few mistakes, but he smiled, spoke slowly, and showed how passionate he was about learning. A few weeks later, he received an email that changed his life. He had been accepted. Arriving in the United States was like stepping into a completely new world. Everything around him was in English, the signs, the conversations, even the jokes people made. At first, he felt completely lost. Native speakers spoke very fast, and he struggled to understand them. But instead of giving up, he decided to use every moment as a learning opportunity. He carried a small notebook in his pocket and wrote down every new word or phrase he heard. Later, he repeated these words to himself, practicing pronunciation and usage. One of his teachers noticed Daniel's effort and said something that stuck with him forever. Fluency is not about knowing every word. It's about using what you know with confidence. Those words changed the way Daniel approached learning. Instead of trying to memorize complicated grammar rules, he focused on speaking in real-life situations. He made new friends, joined a debate club, and practiced English as much as he could in everyday life. Daniel faced a real test during a class presentation. He had to speak in front of everyone, and at first, he felt nervous. His heart beat quickly, and his voice trembled. But he remembered his teacher's advice. He took a deep breath, smiled, and started speaking slowly. Even though he made small mistakes, he spoke with confidence and shared his ideas clearly. After the presentation, his classmates and teacher praised him. He realized that mistakes were not failures, they were part of learning. Through all these experiences, Daniel learned something important. Learning English is not just about studying words or grammar. It is about practicing every day, being brave enough to speak, and using English in real situations. Small steps every day add up to big changes. Daniel's journey shows that anyone can improve if they are patient, consistent, and confident. Today, Daniel speaks English fluently, but he still remembers the days when every sentence felt impossible. He hopes his story can inspire others to keep learning, no matter how hard it seems at first. One day, Daniel had to give a 5-minute speech in front of his entire class. At first, his heart was racing, and his mind went completely blank. He felt nervous and unsure, but then he remembered the days when he used to talk to himself in English back home. Slowly, word by word, he began sharing his story about learning English. He spoke about how he started with almost nothing, how he practiced every day, and how he faced many challenges. By the time he finished, his classmates were clapping. That was the moment Daniel realized something amazing. He had not just learned English, he had changed his life. Years later, Daniel became a language teacher. He often shared his experience with his students and gave them advice he wished he had heard when he was learning. He would say, "Don't wait to feel ready. Start speaking now. Make mistakes proudly because mistakes are proof that you are learning." His students loved hearing this message because it came from someone who truly understood how hard it can be to learn a new language. So, what can we learn from Daniel's story? The most important lesson is this: consistency is more important than perfection. You don't need to study English for hours every day. What really matters is practicing a little bit every day. Listen, read, speak, or even think in English. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes. What matters is that you keep going. Let me ask you a question. What is stopping you from improving your English today? Are you afraid of making mistakes? Do you think you don't have enough time? Or maybe you feel it's too late to start. Remember Daniel. He started with almost nothing. He didn't have perfect pronunciation. He didn't have expensive books or materials. He didn't even live in an English-speaking country. But he had determination, and that determination made all the difference. If you want to reach a high level in English, start with small steps. Watch something in English every day, even a short video or cartoon. Repeat the words and phrases you hear. Keep a notebook to write down new words and review them often. Talk to yourself in English, even if it feels strange or funny. The more you use English, the more natural it becomes, and the more confident you will feel. Daniel's learning didn't stop when he became fluent. The real growth happened when he started using English in everyday life, with friends, classmates, and even family. That's when English became a tool, not just something he studied from books. He learned to express his thoughts, tell stories, and connect with people in a new language. Every conversation made him better. Every mistake became a lesson. Over time, speaking English became easy and natural for him, but he never forgot the early days when each word felt difficult. The key message from Daniel's story is simple. Anyone can improve in English if they practice every day, stay brave, and focus on progress rather than perfection. Learning a language is not about memorizing every rule or word. It's about using what you know, learning from mistakes, and never giving up. Just like Daniel, you can start with very little and, with patience and determination, achieve fluency. Every small step counts. Every effort matters. And most importantly, the journey itself is what changes your life. After returning home from his exchange program, Daniel realized something very important. Many learners think that practicing English only means studying grammar, memorizing words, or watching online lessons. But true fluency comes from using English in real-life situations. You have to speak, listen, and interact with people every day. Daniel discovered this lesson firsthand. At first, he worried about practicing English at home because his family didn't speak it. But instead of seeing this as a problem, he turned it into an opportunity. He began introducing small bits of English into their daily routine. During breakfast, he would say, "Good morning, Mom. How are you today?" At first, his mother laughed and replied, "I don't understand." But Daniel didn't give up. He kept speaking slowly and clearly. After a few weeks, his mother started answering in simple English. Soon, breakfast became a fun little English game for the family. Daniel also helped his younger sister with her English homework. Every evening, they would sit together at the kitchen table reading short stories. Whenever she made a mistake, Daniel didn't correct her immediately. Instead, he asked, "Do you think that sounds right?" This encouraged her to think in English, listen to herself, and learn from her own mistakes. Watching his sister improve reminded Daniel of his own learning journey. He realized that small, patient steps always lead to real progress. Outside of his family, Daniel wanted to practice English with his friends too. But most of his close friends were too shy to speak English. So he came up with a creative idea: an English-only day once a week. On Fridays, anyone who joined him had to speak only in English, no matter how many mistakes they made. The first few sessions were full of laughter. Friends struggled to say simple things, like ordering tea or talking about their weekend plans. But Daniel encouraged them to keep going, reminding them that mistakes were proof of learning. Over time, everyone became more comfortable speaking English. One of Daniel's closest friends, Maria, used to say, "I can read English, but I'm too shy to speak." Daniel encouraged her gently. He told her, "The more you speak, the more confident you become. Mistakes are just part of learning." Slowly, Maria began speaking in short sentences. Every week, her confidence grew. She realized that practicing in a safe, supportive environment made all the difference. Daniel's approach to learning English after returning home shows an important truth. Fluency is not only about studying alone. It comes from using English in daily life, connecting with people, and creating opportunities to speak, listen, and think in English. The more you surround yourself with the language, the more natural it becomes. Every conversation, even if full of mistakes, helps you improve. Every small effort counts. Through this process, Daniel strengthened not only his English skills, but also his relationships. Learning became fun for the whole family and his friends. English was no longer just a subject he studied. It became a tool to connect, share, and express himself. His journey proves that real progress comes from courage, patience, and practice. Every day is a chance to take another step forward, no matter how small. As Daniel and his friends practiced English together, something amazing started to happen. Maria, who had been too shy to speak at first, began using simple English phrases in casual conversations. She spoke while shopping, ordering food, and talking about movies. Slowly, their small group grew. More friends wanted to join because speaking English felt natural and fun. Every Saturday morning, they would meet at a cafe and order everything in English. At first, the waiter sometimes looked surprised, but that didn't stop them. They practiced greetings, small talk, and polite expressions. Even simple sentences like, "Can I have a cup of tea, please?" or "Do you have something without sugar?" became exercises in confidence. With each conversation, they grew more comfortable and brave. Daniel noticed something interesting. When they spoke English together, their body language changed. They smiled more, used hand gestures, and showed excitement in their voices. Speaking English seemed to help them express a new version of themselves, someone more open, curious, and confident. Daniel realized that learning a language was not only about communication. It was also about discovering who you could become through another language. Daniel also made English part of his daily routine. He described what he was doing out loud. While cleaning his room, he said, "I am folding my clothes," or "I need to clean the desk." When cooking, he practiced English by following recipes aloud. "First, I chop the onions. Then I add some salt and pepper." These small habits helped English feel like a natural part of his life, not just a school subject. One day, Daniel's cousin Emily visited. She lived abroad and spoke English fluently. At first, Daniel felt nervous talking to her because he worried she might notice his mistakes. But Emily was kind and encouraging. She said, "Daniel, your English is really natural. You speak with confidence." That simple compliment gave him a huge boost of motivation. It reminded him of how far he had come since the early days when he practiced alone in his room. Soon, Daniel's entire social life started to revolve around using English. He joined more activities, made new friends, and even started helping others who wanted to learn. He realized that English was more than a language, it was a bridge to new experiences and new opportunities. By speaking regularly, making mistakes, and laughing at small errors, he grew not just as a student, but as a person. Daniel learned that fluency is not about perfection. It's about practice, patience, and confidence. The more you use English in everyday life, the more natural it becomes. Every small conversation, every sentence spoken aloud, every word repeated is a step forward. Daniel's story shows that language learning can transform your life if you are brave enough to start and consistent enough to keep going. Through these experiences, Daniel discovered a simple truth: English is not a test. It's a tool to connect, express, and grow. The more you practice it in real-life situations, the stronger and more confident you become. Daniel's journey reminds us all that learning a language is a path to self-discovery, and every small effort counts. Over time, Daniel's whole social circle started including English in small, fun ways. His friends sent English memes, jokes, and short movie clips in their group chat. They practiced casual phrases like "What's up?" or "Long time no see," using them naturally in conversations. Soon, they began hosting monthly English movie nights. Each person brought snacks, and they watched films with English subtitles. After the movie, they would discuss the story, share what they liked, what they learned, and point out new expressions. Through these simple daily moments, English became more than a goal, it became part of their lives. Daniel realized something very important. When English becomes part of your personal world, your family, your friends, your hobbies, it stops feeling like hard work. Learning happens naturally because you are living in English every day. You don't need to force yourself to study. You just use it as part of life. One evening, Daniel invited some friends over for dinner. His mom prepared traditional dishes, and everyone arrived full of excitement. The house was filled with laughter, chatting, and the smell of delicious food. Daniel wanted to create a fun way for everyone to practice English. He started light-hearted conversations, asking questions like, "What's your favorite food?" One friend answered, "I love spicy food, but not too spicy." Another said, "I like desserts more than real meals." Everyone laughed together. Even Daniel's mom joined in. She asked, "Do you like my cooking?" in her thick accent, and everyone clapped and smiled warmly. That night reminded Daniel of an important truth. Language is not about perfect grammar. It is about connection, understanding, and sharing moments with others. As his friends left and the house grew quiet, Daniel sat by the window thinking about his journey. English had started as a dream, a challenge, and sometimes even a frustration. But now it had become part of who he was. It gave him confidence, opened doors to new cultures, and allowed him to enjoy movies, read books, and communicate in ways he never imagined. More than that, it gave him the power to help others learn. He could guide his students, friends, and family because he understood the struggles of learning a new language firsthand. Daniel often told his students, "English is a tool, not a test." Mistakes are proof that you are learning, and the more you practice, the more confident you become. He reminded them that fluency does not come from memorizing every word or grammar rule. It comes from using what you know in real life, taking small steps every day, and being brave enough to keep going even when it feels hard. He explained that learning English is like planting a seed. Small, consistent actions eventually grow into something strong and meaningful. Through his own story, Daniel wanted everyone to understand that language learning is about more than study. It is about life, connections, and personal growth. From talking to himself alone in his room to helping his sister, encouraging friends, and sharing laughs over meals, he discovered that English was not just a language, it was a way to live, to connect, and to express his true self. Daniel's journey teaches a simple but powerful lesson. Learning English, or any language, is not about perfection. It is about consistency, curiosity, and courage. Surround yourself with English. Use it in daily life. Speak, make mistakes, laugh, and keep going. Step by step, day by day, you will grow, and one day you will look back and realize that the journey itself has transformed your life. Daniel often reminded his students, friends, and family that real progress comes from using English in simple, everyday ways. He said, "If you only study English for exams, you will forget it. But if you live it, speak with your family, joke with your friends, describe your day in English, it will stay with you forever." This became his guiding principle. From that moment, Daniel's life revolved around natural English experiences. Every morning, when he walked his dog, he listened to English podcasts. During lunch with friends, they greeted each other in English first. Sometimes, he even wrote messages to his sister in English just for fun. These small, consistent habits kept his skills sharp and his motivation alive. He also learned the importance of patience. He still made mistakes or forgot words from time to time, but he never felt embarrassed. Instead, he would smile and say, "Let me try that again." This positive attitude inspired everyone around him and encouraged them to try more, even when they were unsure. Slowly, Daniel noticed something amazing. His family, friends, and even neighbors began using English phrases naturally. Simple expressions like "see you later," "have a nice day," or "take care" became part of daily life. Children in the neighborhood even started greeting him in English. Daniel felt proud and realized that learning English had given him more than just a language. It had given him confidence, patience, and new connections with people. He understood that learning English was not about perfection. It was about courage, practice, and living the language. It taught him how to keep going even when things were difficult. Daniel saw that English could be part of ordinary life, in family dinners, friendly chats, and small, everyday moments. Every evening, as he reflected on his day, he felt thankful for the early struggles. Those moments of challenge had shaped him into someone who embraced learning through real-life experiences. English was no longer a subject to study or a challenge to overcome. It had become part of his life, a tool for communication, connection, and growth. He could talk freely with friends, help his sister with homework, share jokes in English, and even understand movies or books he once thought were too difficult. Each conversation and small habit strengthened not just his English, but also his confidence and curiosity. Daniel realized that learning a language is more than memorizing words or rules. It's about using what you know, being brave, and practicing daily. The more you surround yourself with English, the more it becomes natural. By making English part of his routine, Daniel discovered that language learning could transform life itself. It opened doors to new friendships, new experiences, and new ways of thinking. In the end, Daniel's journey showed a simple but powerful truth. English is not just a skill, it's a way to live. Every small effort counts, every mistake is part of learning, and every conversation brings growth. With patience, consistency, and courage, anyone can use English to connect, explore, and change their life. For Daniel, English had started as a challenge, but it became a path to confidence, joy, and endless possibilities. Daniel's English practice became a part of his daily life, enjoyed naturally every single day. Each morning, when he woke up, he started by speaking a few sentences aloud in English. He would say things like, "It's a beautiful morning," or "I feel ready for the day." These simple phrases helped him start the day with energy and confidence. His mother often laughed when she heard him talking to himself, but Daniel explained that speaking out loud made his thinking in English faster and more natural. Over time, his family understood that this was more than just practice, it was part of his mindset, a small habit that shaped his day. After breakfast, Daniel liked to go for a short walk around his neighborhood. These quiet moments gave him a chance to listen to English podcasts or short stories. Sometimes he repeated sentences after the speakers to improve his pronunciation. Other times, he summarized what he had heard in his own words. For example, he might quietly say, "The speaker talked about healthy habits," or "The story was about friendship." These small speaking exercises became like a daily workout for his brain, strengthening both his listening and speaking skills. On weekends, Daniel spent time with his neighbors. They had a small group that enjoyed chatting together over tea in the garden. One of the neighbors, Mr. Smith, was an older man who had lived abroad for many years. He loved sharing stories about his time in London. Daniel enjoyed listening to him because it felt like an English lesson mixed with real-life experience. Mr. Smith once said, "When I first moved to England, I couldn't understand the local accent, but I learned that careful listening is the key." Daniel smiled because he could relate. These conversations covered simple topics like the weather, family, and traditions, all in English. Sometimes, Daniel invited his friends over to cook dinner together. This became one of their favorite activities. While preparing meals, they spoke in English, practicing new words and expressions in a fun, relaxed way. For example, Daniel would say, "First, I chop the onions," or "add a little salt and pepper." His friends followed along, describing what they were doing too. These cooking sessions helped them see English as a practical, living language, not just something from books. Even small daily tasks became moments for English practice. When cleaning his room, Daniel would describe what he was doing aloud. "I am folding my clothes," or "I need to clean the desk." When cooking or making tea, he would talk through each step in English. Over time, These habits made speaking and thinking in English feel natural. Daniel no longer needed to force himself to study. English was simply part of his daily life, integrated into routines, conversations, and shared activities. Through these simple, consistent actions, morning sentences, walks with podcasts, conversations with neighbors, and cooking with friends, Daniel realized that true fluency didn't come from studying grammar alone. It came from using English in real situations, enjoying it, and making it a part of everyday life. Each small moment, repeated day by day, built his confidence, vocabulary, and comfort with the language. Daniel and his friends often used real-life activities to practice English, especially while cooking meals together. One friend would read the recipe in English, saying things like, "Chop the tomatoes," or "Boil the pasta for 10 minutes." Daniel noticed that when English was part of a real activity, everyone learned faster. They laughed, asked questions, and corrected each other naturally. Even simple phrases like, "Can you pass me the spoon?" or "This smells amazing," became chances to speak English. One evening, while cooking, Maria accidentally dropped a bowl, and everyone laughed. She said, "Oh no, my clumsy hands again." Daniel replied, "That's a good phrase, clumsy hands." They all repeated it together, turning the little mistake into a fun language moment. It reminded them that learning English didn't always have to be serious. It could happen through laughter, mistakes, and enjoyable activities. Daniel also liked visiting his aunt and uncle on Sundays. They lived about an hour away, so during the bus ride, he listened to English news to practice his vocabulary. When he arrived, his little cousins ran to greet him. They loved practicing English with him because he made it into games. He would say, "Okay, tell me 5 things you can see in this room in English." The kids shouted words like chair, table, window, and cat. This became their favorite family game, combining fun and learning. During lunch, Daniel's uncle asked him about his work. Daniel explained in English that he was teaching part-time and helping others learn the language. His uncle, who didn't speak much English, asked for the meaning of a word, and Daniel translated it. Soon, even his uncle tried saying a few English phrases, like "nice to meet you" and "how are you?" Everyone laughed when he spoke with a strong local accent, but they appreciated his effort. Daniel realized that even small attempts to speak English could make learning fun and inclusive for everyone. One weekend, Daniel and his friends went on a trip to the countryside. During the drive, they played a game called Describe and Guess. One person would describe something in English, and the others had to guess what it was. For example, Daniel might say, "It is round, red, and sweet," and someone would guess an apple. The game made them think quickly in English, practice speaking, and learn new words naturally. They laughed at funny descriptions, encouraged each other, and corrected mistakes gently. Through these everyday activities, cooking together, playing games, family visits, and trips, Daniel realized that English became much more than just a subject to study. It became a way to connect, have fun, and share moments with friends and family. Small, consistent practice in real situations helped him grow more confident every day. Learning English wasn't about being perfect. It was about trying, speaking, making mistakes, and enjoying the process. Daniel also understood that the key to fluency was to use English naturally in life. Whether at home, with friends, or during travel, every conversation, game, or simple sentence was an opportunity to improve. These moments showed him that real progress came from living English, not just reading books or memorizing rules. Over time, these activities created a positive, supportive environment where everyone around him started speaking English more naturally. In the countryside, Daniel and his friends spent hours playing a game in English. One person would describe something without saying its name, and the others had to guess. For example, Maria said, "It's something you use in the morning to brush your teeth." Everyone shouted, "Toothbrush." They laughed at the silly descriptions and learned new words without even realizing it. When they arrived at the small cabin near the lake, The fresh air and peaceful surroundings made Daniel feel relaxed. That evening, as they sat by the fire, they talked about their goals. Daniel said, "I want to become fluent enough to teach English around the world." Maria shared, "I want to travel without being afraid to speak English to strangers." Lucas added, "I want to watch English movies without subtitles." Everyone nodded, feeling inspired by how learning English was opening new dreams for each of them. The next morning, they cooked breakfast together, speaking only in English. They used simple sentences like, "Can you turn on the stove?" or "Where's the butter?" It didn't feel like studying, it was just normal communication. Daniel realized that when language becomes part of daily life, learning no longer feels like a task, it becomes part of who you are. Later, they visited a local market. Daniel encouraged his friends to use English while shopping. When Maria asked the seller, "How much is this?" Daniel quietly helped her with pronunciation. The seller smiled and replied in simple English. These small exchanges built confidence and showed them that practicing English could happen anywhere, even during everyday activities like buying fruit. Back home, Daniel continued his habits with his family. During dinner, he would ask questions like, "What was the best part of your day?" At first, his mother replied in their language, but Daniel gently encouraged her to use English words she already knew. Soon, the whole family began mixing English into their conversations. His little sister even tried forming full sentences, and mistakes became moments of laughter and learning. Daniel noticed that small, consistent practice, cooking, shopping, chatting, playing games, was more effective than hours of studying alone. English was no longer a subject or a test, it was a living, breathing part of life. Each day, through small steps, he grew more fluent and confident. The language became a tool for connection, creativity, and fun. One day, sitting in his room and reflecting, Daniel realized how far he had come. From shyly talking to himself in a shop window months ago to confidently using English in his family, with friends, and in real-world situations, his journey had transformed him. He understood that fluency wasn't about perfection, it was about consistency, courage, and making English a natural part of everyday life. Later that evening, when everyone left, Daniel sat on the porch with his parents and reflected on the day. He smiled, realizing how English had transformed ordinary moments into opportunities for connection and learning. His family had gone from hesitant speakers to playful participants, making mistakes, laughing, and growing together. Daniel also noticed how these experiences had changed him. He was no longer afraid of making mistakes in English. Each small conversation, each game, each playful exercise built his confidence. He understood that language wasn't just about words, it was about sharing, connecting, and having fun while learning. The next day, Daniel continued his daily habits. He walked around the neighborhood, listening to English podcasts and repeating sentences aloud. At home, he practiced cooking in English, describing every step. "I boil the pasta, I add some salt and pepper." Even small moments, like tidying his room, became opportunities to think and speak in English. His younger sister continued leaving him notes around the house, and he replied each time, keeping the language alive in their daily lives. At school and with friends, Daniel's encouragement inspired others to try English in simple ways. They started greeting each other in English, sharing short phrases, and even joking around with English memes and expressions. Over time, Daniel realized the most important lesson of his journey: fluency doesn't come from studying alone, it comes from living the language. Each small step, each playful interaction, each real-life conversation added up. Mistakes weren't failures, they were proof of progress. Consistency, courage, and creativity mattered far more than perfection. Daniel often reflected on how far he had come. From shyly speaking to himself in his room to creating a home and community where English was part of everyday life, his journey had transformed him. He had gained confidence, new relationships, and a sense of possibility he had never imagined. Every day, whether cooking, walking, talking with friends, or journaling, Daniel embraced English as a living part of his life. It had become more than a skill, it was a way to connect, explore, and grow. And as he drifted off to sleep each night, he felt grateful for the small, consistent steps that had led him to a life where English was not just learned, but lived. "Tea this?" Lily replied, "Rice." They laughed when she mispronounced a word, and Daniel gently corrected her, turning each small mistake into a learning moment. By the time they finished shopping, Lily was naming more and more items confidently, and Daniel felt proud of how natural learning had become through everyday activities. On their way home, Daniel reflected on how much English had become a part of his life. He realized that fluency wasn't about memorizing grammar rules or studying long hours. It was about weaving the language into daily routines, making it fun, and using it without fear. Even the simplest tasks like cooking, walking, or shopping offered opportunities to practice and grow. That evening, Daniel suggested a family game. "Let's talk about our day in English." His mom and sister hesitated at first, but soon they started sharing short sentences. "I cooked eggs," said his mom. "I helped my brother," said Lily. Daniel clapped and cheered for every effort, reminding them, it's not about being perfect, it's about trying and having fun. The living room was filled with laughter, encouragement, and small successes, each one strengthening their bond and their confidence in English. Through these consistent, joyful moments, Daniel understood a crucial lesson. Language learning is not a separate task, it is life itself. By living in English, even in small ways, he had transformed not only his own skills, but also the environment around him. Family, friends, neighbors all were now connected through simple English expressions, shared laughter, and daily practice. Daniel often thought back to his early days, when speaking aloud alone in his room felt intimidating. Now, English was everywhere, in meals, walks, conversations, and games. He had discovered that progress comes not from perfection, but from persistence, courage, and a willingness to use the language every day. And so, Daniel continued to live English naturally, knowing that each small effort, each playful interaction, and each simple phrase spoken aloud brought him closer to fluency and helped others around him grow alongside him. "What is this?" Daniel asked, holding up a bag of rice at the grocery store. "Rice," his little sister Lily said proudly. Soon, the two of them turned the shopping trip into a fun game. Every item Daniel picked up, Lily tried to name in English. Apples, milk, bread, eggs, they laughed and cheered each correct answer. At the checkout, Daniel whispered, "Let's try to greet the cashier in English." Lily hesitated but finally said softly, "Hello, how are you?" The cashier looked surprised but smiled warmly. Daniel noticed the joy and pride in Lily's eyes. He realized that a little encouragement could help anyone feel confident and motivated to learn. Evenings became Daniel's favorite time to practice English with friends. They often met at a local park to walk and talk while the sun went down. There were no tests, no pressure, just easy conversation. Sometimes they talked about movies, favorite books, or weekend plans. One evening, Daniel asked, "If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go?" Maria answered, "I want to visit Japan because I like their culture." Lucas said, "I would love to go to Canada. I heard people there are very kind." They laughed, shared ideas, and kept practicing English naturally. Daniel noticed that talking about dreams and personal interests made it easier for his friends to remember words and phrases. English became simpler to use when it connected to emotions or fun topics. So, Daniel began suggesting a theme for each meeting: favorite foods, childhood memories, funny experiences, or school stories. Each topic made their practice feel real and meaningful, not like studying from a textbook. One evening, Daniel invited his friends over for a friendship dinner at his house. He told them, "Tonight, we'll speak only in English. Don't worry, it's not a test. He set the table with candles, soft music, and homemade dishes. As everyone sat down, they started chatting naturally. "This food smells amazing," Maria said. "Daniel is a great cook," Lucas added. Daniel laughed. "I learned from my mom." They talked about their daily routines, work or school stress, and plans for the weekend. The conversation flowed easily, and everyone practiced English without even realizing it. Daniel loved watching how English became part of real life. The small, everyday moments, grocery games, park walks, dinner conversations, helped him and his friends use English confidently. Mistakes were part of the fun, and laughter made learning feel natural. Even simple phrases like, "Hello, can you pass me the butter?" or "This smells good," became important tools for communication. Through these experiences, Daniel realized something important. Learning English was not just about studying. It was about living it, sharing it with others, and connecting through it. He saw that English could bring people together, help express ideas, and make ordinary moments more exciting. Whether shopping with Lily, walking in the park, or hosting friends at dinner, Daniel understood that the language could grow and thrive in everyday life. Even his sister, Lily, began joining in naturally. She left small notes for him in English: "Good morning, brother," or "Thank you for helping me." Daniel would respond in English, and soon the house was filled with little conversations, laughter, and encouragement. He realized that these small habits, speaking aloud, playing games, asking questions, were building more than language skills. They were creating confidence, joy, and a sense of togetherness that went beyond words. By the end of the evening, as the friends left, Daniel sat quietly and thought about how powerful everyday English could be. It didn't matter if someone traveled abroad or had a perfect accent. English could live in small, simple moments at home, in the park, or even at the grocery store. What mattered was practicing, connecting, and enjoying the language every day. During the friendship dinner, Daniel noticed something important. When someone forgot a word, the others helped kindly, without teasing. By the end of the evening, everyone felt comfortable speaking English. Laughter and encouragement filled the room, and small mistakes didn't matter at all. After everyone had left, Daniel's mom asked, "Why do your friends speak English here?" Daniel smiled. "Because it helps us grow, and it brings us closer." His mom nodded thoughtfully. She understood that learning a language was more than memorizing rules. It was about connecting with people and sharing experiences. Later that week, Daniel spent an afternoon helping his neighbor, Mr. Lee, fix a garden fence. Mr. Lee's grandson, Tom, joined them. Tom was learning English at school, so Daniel decided to turn the task into a fun lesson. "Tom, this is called a hammer. Can you say that?" Daniel asked, holding up the tool. "Hammer," Tom repeated carefully. Daniel pointed at the nails. "And these are nails." Soon, Tom started naming tools on his own: wood, paint, brush. Mr. Lee watched proudly as Tom learned naturally by doing the work. Daniel explained that using English while working made it easier to remember. Later, he told his family about the afternoon. His father, who usually stayed quiet, said, "You teach everyone English, but do you still study yourself?" Daniel laughed. "Yes, every day. I read books, watch videos, and talk with my friends. English is like a muscle. You have to use it to keep it strong." His father nodded, impressed. Daniel knew that learning a language wasn't just about classes or exams. It was about daily practice, small habits, and enjoying the process. The next morning, Daniel continued his routine. While having coffee, he listened to an English podcast about daily habits, gratitude, and motivation. Inspired, he wrote in his journal, "Today, I'm thankful for my family, my friends, and my progress." Writing in English helped him reflect. It wasn't just practice, it was a way to express his thoughts and feelings. In the afternoon, he met his friend Maria at a local cafe. They ordered coffee and sat by the window. Maria smiled. "I've started listening to English songs every morning. It helps me wake up in a good mood. Daniel nodded. That's great. I try to speak English to myself every morning. Even simple sentences like, today is a good day or I feel ready. It wakes up my brain and helps me think in English. They laughed together, noticing how small daily habits could make a big difference. Then they started a small conversation game. Daniel would ask a question in English, and Maria had to answer using as many new words as she could. Questions like, what's your favorite food? Or, describe your morning in 3 sentences, made the practice fun and interactive. Daniel realized that real learning happened in ordinary moments. Helping neighbors, having coffee with friends, writing in his journal, or even listening to songs, these little actions kept English alive. It wasn't about perfect grammar or memorizing vocabulary. It was about using English to describe life, express feelings, and connect with others. By the end of the day, Daniel reflected on his progress. He had helped a friend, encouraged his sister, shared fun moments with Maria, and strengthened his own skills. English was no longer just a subject, it had become part of his life, something he could enjoy and share every day. He understood now that learning a language was about consistency, kindness, and creativity. Mistakes didn't stop progress, they made it stronger. And every small effort, every simple phrase, built confidence and connection that went beyond words. Daniel smiled as he closed his journal. This is what learning is really about, he thought. Using English in real life, with real people, every day. Daniel and Maria continued exploring different ways to use English in their everyday lives. That's a great idea, Daniel said. Music is a fun way to learn. They spent time discussing song lyrics, favorite singers, and funny or unusual meanings behind songs. Sometimes, they paused to look up new words together. Daniel realized that English could be part of any interest or hobby, music, food, sports, or even travel. He saw that learning became easier and more enjoyable when it was connected to things people already liked. A few days later, Daniel visited his grandmother. She was elderly and didn't speak English, but she was curious about what he was teaching. Daniel decided to show her a few simple words and phrases. Hello, he said. Thank you. Good night. His grandmother laughed and repeated each word proudly. Then she said, maybe I'm too old to learn. Daniel shook his head gently. You're never too old, he replied. Every word you learn is progress. His grandmother smiled warmly. Then I'll keep trying, she said. Daniel felt deeply moved by this moment. It reminded him that learning a language was a lifelong journey. Age did not matter. What mattered was effort, curiosity, and a willingness to try. He realized that teaching others, even in small ways, helped him understand the true meaning of learning. One Sunday afternoon, Daniel's friends gathered at his house to celebrate his birthday. They brought gifts, snacks, and balloons, turning his home into a cheerful and lively place. The group decided to speak English for fun during the celebration. Happy birthday, Daniel, Maria said with a smile. Make a wish before you blow the candles, Lucas added. They sang the birthday song in English, took pictures, and laughed together. Daniel's little sister also joined in. Happy birthday, big brother, she said. The birthday celebration was a perfect example of how English could fit into real emotions and shared memories. It wasn't about studying or testing, it was about enjoying time with friends and family while practicing naturally. After cake and gifts, the group played games in English. One game was called Describe It, where a person described an object without saying its name, and others had to guess. Daniel held up a word and said, it's cold, sweet, and you eat it in summer. Everyone shouted ice cream and laughed. Another game was Two Truths and a Lie. Each person said 3 sentences, and others had to guess which one was false. The games brought so much laughter that no one even realized how much vocabulary and speaking confidence they were gaining. After the celebration, Daniel reflected on how much English had changed his friendships. They now shared jokes in English, sent each other messages, and played language games naturally. English had become part of their fun, their memories, and the way they connected with each other. Daniel realized that language learning wasn't only about reading books or memorizing grammar. It was about living the language in everyday moments, mixing it with emotions, hobbies, and real experiences. From talking about songs with Maria to teaching his grandmother a few simple words, to laughing with friends during games, English had become a tool for connection and joy. He thought about how far he and his friends had come. Small daily practices, encouragement, and playful learning had turned something that once felt difficult into a natural, enjoyable part of life. Daniel smiled, knowing that with curiosity, patience, and a little fun, anyone could keep learning, no matter their age. Every conversation, every game, every shared laugh became another small step in their journey. Daniel realized that this was what made English truly alive, not perfection, but participation, connection, and enjoyment every single day. Daniel and his friends kept finding ways to mix English into everyday life. They shared short messages, recommended movies, or suggested podcasts to each other. It never felt like studying or homework. It was just part of how they connected and shared ideas. Daniel thought about how language had created a special space for creativity, learning, and understanding among them. The following week, Daniel's friend Lucas invited him to a family gathering at his house. Lucas's parents were also curious about English and wanted to practice. Daniel was happy to join. They spoke a mix of English and their local language, making the conversation comfortable and natural. At one point, Lucas's father pointed to a traditional dish and asked, "Daniel, how do you say this in English?" Daniel smiled and said, "It's called rice pudding." Everyone repeated the words, laughing together at their attempts. They continued chatting about food, hobbies, and family traditions. It was simple, everyday conversation, but it was meaningful. Daniel realized that this was what real English looked like, language in use, not just words in a book. Later that evening, Daniel walked home under the warm glow of streetlights. He felt grateful. English had become more than a subject to study. It had become a bridge connecting people of different ages, experiences, and personalities. He thought back to the early days when he practiced alone, speaking to himself and reading books. Now he was surrounded by voices, laughter, and conversation in English. It felt alive. The next morning, Daniel went jogging with Maria. They often used this time to practice English in a relaxed way. "I'm out of breath," Maria said, panting. Daniel laughed and replied, "You need more training." As they ran, they described what they saw. "The sky looks beautiful today," Daniel said. Maria added, "The air feels fresh." Small phrases like these turned an ordinary jog into a meaningful English practice session. When they finished, they sat on a bench near a calm pond, breathing in the quiet morning air. Daniel said, "You know, I used to be afraid of speaking English in public." Maria nodded. "Me too. But now it feels natural," she admitted. Daniel smiled. "That's what happens when you make English part of your life. It grows with you." That evening, Daniel helped his younger sister, Lily, with her school project. She had to describe her favorite family member in English. Daniel guided her gently. "Think about what makes them special," he said. "Then try to put it into simple sentences." Lily hesitated at first, but soon started writing. "My mom is kind," she said. "She cooks delicious food. She helps me with homework." Daniel nodded proudly. "Perfect. Those are all great sentences. Now read them aloud." Hearing her own words in English gave Lily confidence. She smiled, realizing she could express her thoughts clearly, even in another language. Daniel felt proud too. These small moments, jogging, family projects, casual conversations, were teaching both him and the people around him that learning English didn't need to be formal or stressful. It could be natural, enjoyable, and connected to real life. He thought about how far they had come. From practicing alone at home to playing games with friends, helping neighbors, and now speaking confidently with family members, English had become a living part of their daily world. Daniel realized that language is strongest when it's shared, practiced, and connected to real emotions and experiences. He smiled, thinking of the many ways they could keep growing together through small conversations, shared laughter, and everyday activities. Each moment, no matter how ordinary, could become a chance to practice, learn, and connect. Lily smiled as she finished writing in her little notebook. She had written, "My brother Daniel helps me learn English. He is kind and funny." Daniel read it and laughed softly. It was a simple sentence, but it meant a lot to him. It showed that his small daily efforts were making a difference. His sister was learning and enjoying English, and that made all his hard work feel worthwhile. Before going to bed, Daniel thought about how English had become part of his everyday life. It was in the kitchen when he helped his mom cook, in the park when he walked with friends, at the market when he practiced words with his sister, and in the laughter and games they shared. English was no longer just something he studied. It had become something he lived, shared, and enjoyed with the people who mattered most. The next morning, after finishing breakfast, I sat in the living room with a warm cup of coffee, scrolling through my phone. My younger sister, Emma, came over and sat beside me. She looked curious and asked, "Blake, you always study English in the mornings. Doesn't it get boring?" I smiled. "Not really, Emma. I actually enjoy it. It's like exercising my brain. Every time I read or listen to something new, I learn a word or a phrase that helps me understand people better." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I guess that makes sense. I want to improve my English too, especially my speaking. But I don't know where to start." I said, "You can start with small things. Try speaking English for 10 minutes every day. Talk about what you did yesterday, what you plan to do today, or something interesting that happened at school." Emma laughed. "That sounds easy, but I'll probably forget what to say." I reassured her. "That's fine. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is practice. You will make mistakes, and that's okay. Mistakes help you learn and remember." Later that afternoon, my friend Daniel came over. We hadn't seen each other for a few weeks, so we sat down to catch up. We talked about work, life, and small daily routines. Daniel works at a travel agency, meeting people from different countries every day. He said, "You know, Blake, learning English has really helped me at work. I can explain things clearly to foreign customers, and they trust me more because I can speak to them." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Language wasn't just about learning words or grammar. It was a tool to connect with people, to build trust, and to share ideas. Daniel continued, "Even small habits, like reading articles or listening to podcasts in English, make a big difference. It's like training a muscle. You need to use it to keep it strong." I smiled. "That's true. And the best part is when English becomes part of life. You don't have to sit at a desk for hours. You can use it in everyday moments, talking to friends, helping family, or even playing games." Daniel nodded. "Exactly. The more you use it, the more confident you become. It stops feeling like studying and starts feeling like a natural part of who you are." We talked for a while longer, sharing small stories, jokes, and ideas in English. It felt relaxed, enjoyable, and useful. I realized that learning English wasn't just about memorizing words or preparing for tests. It was about connection, confidence, and making small choices every day to practice, speak, and share. By the time Daniel left, I felt inspired. I thought about my sister, my friends, and even strangers I could interact with. Every small conversation, every little sentence I practiced was helping me grow. Learning English was no longer a task. It was part of living, part of communicating, and part of enjoying life. "That's one of the biggest advantages of knowing English," I said. "It connects people. You can talk to anyone, anywhere in the world." Daniel smiled. "I remember when I first started learning. I was so shy to speak. I always worried about making mistakes." I nodded. "Everyone goes through that phase, even I did. The secret is to stop thinking too much about grammar when you talk. Just focus on getting your message across. The more you speak, the more natural it becomes. That evening, my parents joined us for dinner. My mother asked, "Blake, how is your English podcast going?" I smiled and said, "It's going really well. I've been getting messages from people all over the world who listen to it to improve their English." My father looked proud. "That's wonderful. When I was young, I wish we had something like podcasts or online lessons. We only had books and radio shows." I laughed. Yes, times have really changed. Now we have so many ways to practice: videos, online conversations, and even AI tools to help with speaking. My mother nodded thoughtfully. "I think the best way to learn is by using English in real life, not just studying it from books." I agreed completely. That's exactly what I tell my listeners, too. Real conversations, even short ones, are much better than memorizing long lists of words. After dinner, I went for a short walk with my friend Lisa. She had just returned from a family gathering and was laughing as she told me about her uncle. "He doesn't speak English very well, but he always tries," she said. "He mixes words sometimes and even makes up new ones. But he never feels embarrassed." I laughed. That's the right attitude. Confidence is more important than perfection. Lisa nodded. I think so too. Sometimes people are so afraid of making mistakes that they stop talking completely. I agreed. Exactly. The moment you stop practicing because of fear, you stop improving. Speaking a little imperfectly is better than not speaking at all. Every conversation, no matter how small, helps you grow. We continued walking and talked about how English had become part of our everyday lives. I explained how I tried to use English naturally with family, friends, and even strangers. "It doesn't have to be formal," I said. "You can talk about food, music, hobbies, or anything you like. When it's fun, you remember words better." Lisa smiled. I think that's the key. Learning doesn't have to be boring or stressful. It should be part of life, something you enjoy and share with others. I nodded, feeling grateful for the way English had changed my world. It was no longer just a subject to study. It had become a way to connect, laugh, and create memories. From small daily chats with my sister to walking and talking with friends, every moment became a chance to learn and grow. By the time we returned home, I realized how much confidence comes from practicing without fear. Speaking imperfectly but consistently was the path to improvement. Every conversation, every laugh, every small success added up. English had stopped being just a language for me. It had become a bridge to people, ideas, and new experiences. "You know," I said, "if you stop practicing, your progress slows down. It's like any other skill. If you don't use it, you lose it." She thought for a moment and then said, "You're right. Maybe I should start joining those English conversation groups again." "That's a great idea," I replied. Speaking with others really helps. It's fun, and you can even learn from their mistakes. Later that day, my cousin Sarah called. She's been living abroad for 2 years. "Hey Blake," she said, "I'm thinking of visiting next month. You know what? My English has improved so much since I moved here." "That's amazing, Sarah," I said. "What helped you the most?" She laughed. "Honestly, living with native speakers. You have no choice but to use English every day at the grocery store, at work, with friends. It forces you to think in English." "That's the best way to learn," I said. When you live in an English-speaking environment, your brain starts to adapt naturally. Sarah continued, "Yes, and I noticed something else. When I stopped translating everything into my native language, I began to understand faster." "That's a big step," I agreed. Thinking directly in English helps you speak smoothly. Translating everything in your head slows you down. She smiled. "Exactly. Now I even dream in English sometimes." I laughed. "That's when you know you're becoming fluent." The next morning, while watering my plants, I met my neighbor, Mrs. Brown. She's elderly, very kind, and loves to chat. "Good morning, Blake," she said. "I heard your podcast yesterday. You were talking about learning through stories, right?" I smiled. "Yes, that's right. Stories help people connect emotionally, and that makes learning more effective." Mrs. Brown nodded. I agree. When I was a teacher, I always used stories to teach grammar and vocabulary. Students remembered stories much better than dry exercises. Exactly, I said. When something touches your emotions, it stays in your memory. It's easier to recall and use later. She chuckled. That's true. Even now, I remember little stories from my students from many years ago. I thought about how powerful small, everyday actions can be. Using English didn't have to be complicated. It could happen while shopping, chatting with friends, listening to music, or telling stories. Even dreaming in English showed that the brain adapts naturally when it's engaged every day. Sarah's experience reminded me that full immersion, even in small ways, can make a huge difference. And Mrs. Brown's example showed that connecting learning with emotions through stories, laughter, or meaningful conversation helps people remember and enjoy the language. I realized that English had become more than just words for me. It was a living part of life. It could happen in a podcast, in the garden, or even in a short chat with a neighbor. Every conversation, every story, and every little effort built confidence, understanding, and connection. That is how language truly grows, not just in the mind, but in daily life. By the time I finished watering the plants, I felt thankful for these small moments. They were proof that learning English didn't need perfection, just practice, curiosity, and a little bit of courage. Every day offered a new opportunity to use it, share it, and enjoy it with others. Mrs. Brown smiled and said, "You know, language is not just about words. It's about culture, feelings, and people." I nodded. That's so true. When you understand how people think and show their emotions in English, your speech starts to sound more natural. Yes, she replied. And the best learners are those who listen carefully. Listening well builds understanding. That's why I always tell my listeners to listen actively, not just hear, I said. Notice the tone, the rhythm, and the way people use expressions in sentences. Later that day, I met my friend Kevin at a small cafe. Kevin had been working hard to improve his English pronunciation. "Blake," he said, "I can understand everything when I read or listen, but when I speak, I feel my accent is too strong." I smiled. Having an accent is completely normal. It's part of who you are. The goal isn't to sound perfect, but to speak clearly and confidently. Kevin nodded. That's encouraging, but I still want people to understand me easily. Then focus on intonation and stress, I told him. Listen to how native speakers say sentences, not just individual words. That rhythm makes a big difference. We practiced a few sentences together. I had him repeat them until they flowed smoothly. After a while, he laughed and said, "Wow, this really helps. It's like music. I can feel the rhythm." Exactly, I said. English has a natural rhythm. When you get used to it, your speech becomes more fluent and confident. "I'll try shadowing," Kevin said. "That's when you listen to a recording and repeat it right after." Yes, I agreed. Shadowing is one of the best techniques. It improves your pronunciation, your speed, and your confidence at the same time. As the day went on, I realized something important. Every person I had spoken to, Emma, Daniel, my parents, Lisa, Sarah, Mrs. Brown, and Kevin, had something in common. They were all trying to use English in real life, not just study it from books. They spoke to friends, practiced at home, listened to podcasts, and shared stories. That's the difference between learners who improve quickly and those who get stuck. It's not about knowing every grammar rule or memorizing long lists of words. It's about using the language in daily life, in meaningful situations. It's about talking, making mistakes, listening carefully, and connecting with people. Language learning isn't only about memorizing. It's about feeling confident enough to try, laugh at mistakes, and enjoy the process. Real improvement comes when English becomes part of life, through conversation with friends, family, neighbors, or even while listening to music and repeating sentences. I realized that all the small moments, helping Daniel teach his sister, talking with Kevin about pronunciation, or chatting with Mrs. Brown about stories, were building something bigger. Each moment added experience, confidence, and understanding. English was no longer just a subject to study. It had become a tool to connect with people, share emotions, and live fully in the world. And that's when I understood the key secret. The fastest learners aren't those who memorize the most words. They are those who use English every day, in real life, with real people, and with real feelings. That's the real power of language. That night, after a long and busy day, I sat in the living room with my parents and sister. We were all tired but happy to be together. My father turned on the television, but the news sounded so serious that it made the room feel tense. My mother quickly suggested, let's turn it off and just talk for a while. We never spend enough time just chatting as a family anymore. I nodded immediately. Yes, Mom. We're always busy with work, school, and phones. It's nice to just sit and talk. Emma smiled. Okay, but what should we talk about? My father laughed softly. Anything. Tell us something interesting that happened at school today. Emma thought for a moment and said, well, today our teacher asked everyone to give a short speech in English about our favorite hobby. I was so nervous, but I did it. My mother clapped her hands proudly. That's wonderful, Emma. What did you talk about? Emma smiled shyly. I talked about cooking. I told my class how I learned to make pancakes and why I love spending time in the kitchen. I laughed. You should have told them about your first pancake disaster when you burned half of them. Everyone laughed, and Emma said, hey, that was my first try. Now I can make perfect ones. The room felt warm with laughter. My father then looked at me and said, Blake, when you were her age, you also had to give speeches in English, didn't you? I nodded. Yes, but I was very shy back then. I remember trembling while holding my paper. My English wasn't good, and I was afraid of making mistakes. But later, I realized that everyone makes mistakes. What matters is trying and learning. My mother added, that's true. Confidence comes with practice. When I first moved to the city, I couldn't speak English at all. I used to get nervous whenever someone asked me for help or directions. I looked at her, curious. So how did you get better? She smiled. By using English every day, even if it was scary at first. I listened carefully, repeated words, asked questions, and slowly, I began to understand and speak more naturally. Making mistakes wasn't the end of the world, it was part of learning. Emma nodded thoughtfully. I think I understand. That's why I got nervous today, but it's also why I felt proud after finishing my speech. I tried and I learned something. Yes, I said. Every time you speak English, even a little, you're getting stronger. It's like exercising a muscle. The more you use it, the more confident you become. My father smiled. It's also about connecting with people. When you speak, even imperfectly, you open a door to understanding and friendship. We all sat quietly for a moment, feeling the warmth of the room and the comfort of being together. Emma leaned back and said, I think English isn't just words or rules. It's about trying, practicing, and sharing with others. I nodded. Exactly. And the best part is that it grows with you. Each conversation, each small attempt, adds to your confidence and understanding. Learning doesn't stop, it becomes part of life. That evening, we talked more about our days, our hobbies, and our little mistakes. The TV stayed off. Instead, the room was filled with stories, laughter, and encouragement. For the first time in a long while, English didn't feel like a subject to study, it felt like a way to connect, to share, and to live. I didn't speak English very well either, Mrs. Parker said, settling into the chair. But little by little, I improved by talking to neighbors and watching English shows. I smiled at her. That's a perfect example of learning naturally. You didn't just sit with a book. You learned from real life by using English in your everyday activities. Mrs. Parker nodded. Exactly. And the more you use it, the more confident you become. I remember feeling nervous at first, but over time, it became easier and even fun. Just then, the doorbell rang again. Emma jumped up. I'll get it. It was Mrs. Parker's turn. She carried a small basket of cookies. I baked too many. Please take some before I eat them all myself, she said with a laugh. We all chuckled and invited her to join us at the table. She set the basket down and smiled warmly. You know, talking with young people like you helps me practice, too. Language is alive when we share it, not just when we study it alone. Emma eagerly picked a cookie. So learning English can be fun, too, she asked. Mrs. Parker winked. Very much so. Every conversation, every story, every small mistake is part of the journey. The important thing is to enjoy it. I nodded. That's exactly what I've been telling my friends. Real-life English, speaking, listening, laughing together, is what helps you grow fastest. The room filled with laughter and the sweet smell of cookies. We shared stories of small victories in learning English, of funny misunderstandings, and of moments when a word or phrase suddenly clicked. It wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about connection, practice, and joy. By the time Mrs. Parker left, the sun had set, and the living room felt warmer than ever, not just from the lights, but from the sense of shared experience. Emma looked at me with a shy smile. I think I want to talk more in English every day. I grinned. That's the best way to learn. Little by little, it becomes part of life. And who knows? One day, you might be helping someone else just like Mrs. Parker helped me. Emma listened quietly and said, "That's what Blake told me to do." I started watching kids' shows in English, and I can understand more words now. I smiled. See? That's exactly how it works. Little by little, it becomes easier. And the best part is you can mix learning with fun. After lunch, Mark grabbed the frisbee, and we all went to the open field. We played, ran, and laughed, calling out in English as we threw and caught. Daniel shouted, "Catch it," and Emma giggled as she ran to grab the frisbee. Even small phrases like, "good job," and "try again," were practice in disguise. Later, we sat under a big tree, listening to music from Daniel's Bluetooth speaker. The songs were in English, and we sang along, trying out the new words we had learned. Lisa hummed a tune and asked, "Do you guys know what this word means?" We all joined in looking up the lyrics, laughing when some translations were funny or unexpected. It was a mix of learning, fun, and friendship. By the time the picnic ended, the sun was low, painting the park with warm golden light. Emma turned to me and said, "I think I'm getting braver speaking in English now." I ruffled her hair. That's the point. Every little step counts, whether it's a chat, a game, or a song. English becomes easier when you use it every day. Daniel nodded. It's true. The more we practice together, the more confident we get. And it's fun because it doesn't feel like studying, it feels like life. We packed up our things and walked home, chatting in a mix of English and our own language. I realized that moments like these, picnics, games, songs, and laughter, were just as important as any lesson in a book. Language had become a bridge connecting us, not just to words, but to each other.